And I bring before you a somewhat ambitious piece of legislation, House Bill 395, which seeks to address the problem of healthcare costs by instituting a reference-based cost system under the auspices of the PSC. Now, I hope we will all agree that there is a need to address this problem, and the solution that this bill offers has a great deal of promise, so I hope that you will give it due consideration. Now, prior to 1972, we had price controls on healthcare costs. The Nixon administration removed those price controls, and we began an experiment of converting what is a need, medical care, into a commodity, like many other things to be bought and sold. But when it comes to hospital care, it's usually a need and not a want. Now consider this. We've been using a market model for decades, and there is still no wide array of choices. There is no price transparency, and there is no competition when it comes to hospital care. For example, if Representative Pearson sits on me, the ambulance is going to come and scrape me off the carpet. But do I get a choice of which ambulance company picks me up? Do I get a choice of what emergency room that I go to, or do I get a choice of my emergency room physician? And the answer to that is, of course, no. So simply stated, hospitals have had the power of monopoly since 1972, and prices at hospitals have been increasing at what I think is an unreasonable rate ever since then. Now, there's going to be data forthcoming on that, but I think we can all agree that healthcare costs have been rising at an alarming rate. Now, it is also disturbing to me that they, the hospitals that is, have been using their economic power to purchase private medical practices and consolidate the industry under their management. And I would like to call your attention to the exhibit entitled Network Savings here. It looks like this. So what we see here is the bill from a cancer patient. The patient saw a physician for treatment. And as you can see, that treatment was very expensive, $7,760. That physician's practice was then purchased by a hospital, and not even a month later, the same patient saw the same doctor, got essentially the same treatment, and note how the price jumped from $7,700 up to $25,700 thereabouts. Again, same doctor, same medications, same office, and the price went from unreasonable to ludicrous. When we took price controls off of healthcare, hospitals began to employ what's called the charge master system. And basically, hospitals get to charge whatever they can. And under the charge master system, hospitals can overcharge those with resources and claim that they are shifting costs from those who can't pay as much. That is not a free market system. That's something else. Now, sometimes you hear that insurance companies can protect us from those charge master prices, and it is true that our insurance companies negotiate a percentage off of the charge master prices, but I would assert that 10 or 20% off of an absurd bill is still ridiculous. We've got to do something about the costs. Now, you may hear from some of the lobbyists behind me that the medical system does a lot of pro bono work. I would like for you to ask them this question. How often do you charge the indigent and then forgive the debt? This is something I experienced with some of my clients when I was a financial educator with AmeriCorps. People would get extremely high medical bills, and we would attempt to negotiate them down after they'd gone bankrupt. Simply put, how much of hospitals' pro bono work is actually medical bills that are uncollectible? And while we're on the subject of pointed questions, I would like to know how many private practices, urgent cares, and how much land have hospitals purchased in the last couple years? And out of these hospitals that have made these purchases, how many of these hospitals are so-called nonprofits? I've distributed some of the 990s from hospitals from around the state for your edification there. It's a little bit of light reading for you tonight if you have trouble sleeping. Now, we're told that hospitals absorbing private practices brings a greater efficiency. I disagree. I think it's time to recognize that because hospitals are behaving like monopolies, we need to control them like monopolies. And that's why I've drafted legislation to do just that. Treat hospitals like the monopolies they are. So House Bill 395 redefines hospitals as public utilities, just like electric utilities, railroads, and water systems. Public utilities rates are controlled by our Public Service Commission because there is a recognition that there is a need to protect the public from predatory pricing. So by defining hospitals as public utilities, the PSC can set their rates. Now, that seems complicated, but there is a system that sets rates already. There already exists a reference point. Hospital procedures and costs are currently defined, they are coded, and they are costed out in Medicare. And this method of using an established standardized rate system is called reference-based cost or reference-based pricing. So recognizing that Medicare rates may be too low, House Bill 395 would allow hospitals to charge rates that are somewhat higher than standard Medicare rates. For private hospitals, the charge would be set at 1.5 times the Medicare rate. For the so-called nonprofit hospitals, the rate would be lower at 1.38 times the Medicare rate. Now, those rates might seem arbitrary, but I predicated them on a Princeton study that sought to find a break-even point. Now, since putting this bill together, I've learned that the state health plan has already implemented this method of referencing medical costs to Medicare rates. The ratios they use are more like 2.0 and 2.25 times Medicare rates. And I'm open to that. But the thing is, we have got to do something. Because if we let this genie out of the bottle in 1972, and we have allowed this industry to eat up more and more of our GDP, we've gotten to the point where the medical system often strips people of their wealth in their declining years. We are at a point where employers and employees are forced to pay more and more for healthcare plans, which eats into companies' bottom lines and makes them less able to offer higher wages. I assert that the rise in healthcare costs is part and parcel of wage stagnation over the last 10 years. Our businesses now compete on a world market with companies that don't have extortionate healthcare costs. This imposes a huge burden on our economy and on succeeding generations. Simply put, the charge master system is draining our economy. Now, I'm quite certain that hospitals will not be happy about rates being imposed on them. I'm rather confident of that. But I would respond to that we, the people, and our constituents are sick and tired of hospital rates that are being imposed on us. They, the hospitals, would still have the option of going before the PSC to request higher rates. This would be just like any other public utility who have to present their costs in order to justify their rates. That's a fair system that protects us, the people who pay those rates. So I'm going to sit down now and I will take a pummeling from the hospital lobby, but I do reserve the right to close. Thank you.
Thank you.